This video is for entertainment.
What happens when one of Tinseltown's most adored leading ladies finds herself cornered under the intense glare of live, national television, facing a line of questioning that threatens to shatter her carefully managed public image? You're about to witness the extraordinary moment the charismatic Jennifer Lawrence transitioned from a delightful, engaging guest to an uncontainable force of nature. And the catalyst? A single query that crossed a personal boundary she never imagined a host would dare to trespass on air. This is far beyond the scope of a typical celebrity interview flop. This is the fateful day millions across the nation watched a cinematic titan completely lose her cool, and the reverberations of that moment were absolutely unprecedented. But before we plunge headfirst into the core of this seismic confrontation, do yourself a favor. Smash that subscribe button and leave a comment telling us what you genuinely believe was the secret trigger for Jennifer's incredible reaction. Was it just the words, or was it something much deeper, tied to her past? Trust me, you'll be on the edge of your seat and won't want to miss a single, scorching word of this legendary exchange. Stick with us until the bitter end to get the full story of the devastating aftermath. Sun the morning jitters and an icon arrives. The broadcast day began, seemingly indistinguishable from any other edition of The View. The iconic, circular table pulsed with its familiar, high-octane energy as the seasoned co-hosts prepped for what they all assumed would be a completely run-of-the-mill press junket appearance. Jennifer Lawrence was on the docket as part of the promotional push for her latest cinematic release, and the expectation was a predictable blend of friendly chit-chat, amusing tidbits from the set, and probably a few light-hearted jokes about her well-documented tendency toward minor physical mishaps. The live studio audience was densely packed with devoted fans, many holding up handmade signs bearing her name and sporting attire featuring memorable images from her Oscar-winning career. Sitting confidently in her customary position, Joy Behar meticulously reviewed her cue cards, wearing that trademark, knowing half-smile that longtime viewers understand signals an impending verbal dive bomb. It was clear she hadn't just glanced at the headlines, she'd done intensive background research. But something felt subtly different about her demeanor that morning, a palpable tension that hinted she intended to move well past the surface-level banter. Her fellow panelists, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, were engrossed in their own last-minute preparations, blissfully unaware that they were all about to become live witnesses to arguably the most explosive, unscripted moment in the program's long history. When Jennifer Lawrence strode onto the platform, she embodied the exact star persona the public had come to adore, radiant, effortlessly elegant, cracking self-effacing jokes about her inherent klutziness and sharing genuinely warm hugs and smiles with each co-host. She was impeccably dressed in a gorgeous navy blue ensemble that perfectly complemented her sun-kissed blonde hair, and her pure kinetic energy seemed to flood the entire studio with light. The crowd erupted in a thunderous wave of applause and cheers, with many fans rising to their feet to acknowledge the beloved Academy Award winner. Welcome back to The View. We are joined by the absolutely magnificent and immensely talented Jennifer Lawrence. Whoopi declared over the deafening ovation. How is your day shaping up so far, sweetheart? It's going wonderfully. Thank you all so much for having me back, Jennifer responded, settling into her seat with the familiar, hearty laugh that had charmed millions globally. I always genuinely feel so comfortable here with you ladies, you truly make it feel like home. Performing arts from banter to a brutal interrogation. The first segment unfolded precisely as everyone had anticipated. Sarah Haynes smoothly initiated the discussion about the new movie, and Jennifer delivered her responses with that expert mix of professional detail and comedic timing that has made her a highly sought-after guest. She recounted a hilarious anecdote about a minor catastrophe on set, walking straight into a pristine glass door she'd mistaken for open space, sending the crowd into a delighted uproar. "Oh my gosh, that is so you!" Sunny exclaimed, shaking her head playfully. "Do you think you'll ever manage to shake off the clumsiness, or is that just an integral part of your charm now?" "Oh, believe me, it's a permanent fixture," Jennifer countered with a wide grin. "My publicist has actually started budgeting extra minutes into my itinerary just to account for the inevitable, random collisions. Just last week, I somehow tripped over literally nothing and ended up totally tangled in the red carpet. I'm still trying to figure out the physics of that one. The dialogue flowed easily from one subject to the next. They covered her process for inhabiting the character, her views on the current landscape of Hollywood, and even her recent, surprisingly therapeutic hobby of ceramic pottery, which had apparently yielded a collection of charmingly lopsided, yet beloved, bowls. Jennifer appeared utterly relaxed, effortlessly trading jokes with the panel and engaging with the studio audience in a way that showcased her reputation as one of the most genuinely likable stars in the entertainment world. But then, a distinct change in the atmosphere occurred. Joy Behar, who had been conspicuously reserved during the earlier, lighter part of the interview, suddenly leaned forward with a startling intensity that caught everyone off guard. She had clearly been biding her time, and now, she was prepared to launch her offensive. "Jennifer, I'd like to pivot to something a little more serious, if you're amenable," Joy began, her voice adopting that probing, prosecutorial tone that longtime viewers understood meant the comfort zone was about to be abandoned. There has been an extensive public conversation recently regarding privilege within the Hollywood machine, and I am genuinely curious about your perspective on how your personal background may have played a factor in your astronomical success. Jennifer's bright smile wavered slightly, but she managed to maintain her professional poise. "Of course. I think it's crucial to acknowledge that I have been incredibly lucky and blessed in both my personal life and my career trajectory. But let's delve into the specifics, shall we?" Joy pressed, her voice sharpening noticeably. "You hail from Kentucky. You've openly discussed your family's prior financial difficulties, yet you were afforded opportunities that remain inaccessible to most. For instance, you relocated to New York at the remarkably young age of 14 to seriously pursue acting. Most ordinary families simply cannot afford to uproot their entire lives and bankroll a move like that." "Well, yes, my parents certainly made enormous sacrifices," Jennifer replied, a slight defensive edge creeping into her tone. "But they completely believed in my aspiration, and they worked exceptionally hard to make it a reality. It was a stressful time for all of us." Joy remained conspicuously unsatisfied with this measured response. She coolly shuffled her notes, making direct, unwavering eye contact with Jennifer, a look that caused her co-hosts to exchange nervous, cautionary glances. "I conducted some independent research into your family's history, and I came across some rather fascinating data concerning your father's construction enterprise," Joy continued, dropping the bombshell. "It would appear your family might have been substantially more financially secure than you have implied in your numerous past interviews." A deafening hush descended upon the studio. Even the audience seemed to collectively hold their breath, sensing that a deeply uncomfortable boundary had just been crossed. Jennifer's entire demeanor transformed instantly. Her shoulders became rigid, her jaw clenched tight, and for the very first time since she'd entered, she looked genuinely, dangerously incensed. "I am sorry, but what exactly is the insinuation you are making?" Jennifer demanded, her voice dropping to a perilously low register that sent a collective shiver through everyone watching. "I am not making any insinuations at all," Joy retorted with a studied, irritating calmness that confirmed she knew precisely the chaos she was inciting. "I am merely highlighting that there seems to be a clear disparity in how you have narrated your upbringing. Some observers might characterize it as a carefully manufactured public narrative." The rest of the panel looked utterly aghast. Whoopi subtly shook her head in disapproval while Sarah and Sunny appeared as though they longed to physically vanish beneath the table. Alyssa was frantically scribbling notes, likely trying to formulate a strategy to rescue a segment that was rapidly plummeting into a train wreck. Jennifer's eyes flashed with a blazing fury the studio had never witnessed. The transformation was so immediate and profound it was as if a completely different personality had erupted from behind the universally adored public image. "Manufactured public narrative," Jennifer repeated, her voice escalating with each word. "Are you honestly sitting there and suggesting that I have been fabricating stories about my childhood just to generate sympathy points?" Joy, clearly basking in the escalating drama she had created, doubled down. "I am simply stating that the concrete facts don't always align perfectly with the recounted story. Your father's firm was evidently quite prosperous. Your family was the owner of a horse farm, yet you have consistently painted a picture of someone who emerged from exceptionally humble beginnings. Stop right there, Jennifer commanded, raising her hand with such forceful finality that Joy involuntarily flinched. You have absolutely zero comprehension of what you are talking about. And the sheer audacity that you believe you can sit here and clinically dissect my family's financial history like some kind of back-alley amateur detective is beyond outrageous. The audience was now engulfed in absolute silence, the kind of eerie quiet that only descends when people realize they are bearing witness to something they definitely shouldn't be seeing. Camera operators frantically adjusted their lenses for close-ups. Producers were barking urgent instructions into their headsets. The co-hosts looked like they were spectators to a slow-motion disaster. Jennifer, I believe what Joy is genuinely trying to communicate, Whoopi attempted to interject, but Jennifer immediately cut her off. No, Whoopi. Let her conclude her research. Jennifer snapped, her gaze locked squarely on Joy. Since she's apparently conducted such a comprehensive study of my family, I am absolutely dying to hear what other fascinating, private discoveries she has made about my personal life. Joy, either completely oblivious to the dangerous territory she was in or simply too obstinate to withdraw, continued her inquisition. Well, since you asked, I also found it very curious that you have never openly addressed the fact that your family maintained connections to the entertainment industry via your mother's side. That seems vastly different from the small-town girl discovered by chance backstory that has been so widely circulated in the press. That was the irrevocable final line. Jennifer shot up from her chair with such explosive speed that it rolled backward and nearly toppled over. The entire studio collectively gasped, and visible security personnel took a cautious step forward, clearly unsure of the immediate physical threat. You want to talk about my mother's side of the family? Jennifer's voice was now shaking with barely restrained, volcanic anger. My mother's second cousin worked as a lowly grip on no-budget independent films 2 decades ago. That's the colossal entertainment industry connection you're referring to. A man I met precisely twice in my entire existence. Who had absolutely zero influence on my career, who never placed a single phone call on my behalf, and whom I haven't spoken to in over 10 years. She began to pace the stage, her hands aggressively gesticulating as years of pent-up frustration and pain poured out. And you dare to question my father's construction company? You want the real scoop on how successful it truly was? It declared bankruptcy when I was 16. We lost our house. My parents were forced to move in with my grandmother, and I had to scramble to figure out how to financially sustain myself in the most expensive city in the world, New York, while still desperately chasing an acting dream. Joy's expression now shifted, as if the full realization of how profoundly she had overreached was finally hitting her. But Jennifer was just reaching her peak. You sit there smugly with your meager research and your little note cards, convinced you've uncovered some grand conspiracy about my background, she spat out. But you know nothing about the endless nights my mother cried herself to sleep, terrified we were about to lose absolutely everything. You know nothing about my father grinding through 18-hour shifts to desperately salvage his business, or about me existing on nothing but cheap ramen noodles for weeks because I couldn't afford a single other thing. Isn't that a juicy little detail your research missed? The live camera feed captured every searing moment of this disintegration, and viewers across America were watching, slack-jawed, as one of Hollywood's most famously composed women spectacularly lost her composure on live television. Social media was already melting down with viral clips and frenzied reactions. Inside the studio, every single person was frozen in place. Will they cut to commercial? Stay tuned to see how this incredible moment concludes. Jennifer, please, let's just pause and take a breath, Sarah Haynes attempted to intercede, her own voice slightly trembling. No, Sarah. I am not taking a breath. Jennifer shot back, whirling to face the entire panel. I am utterly exhausted by people like her, she pointed a trembling finger directly at Joy, who believe they can unilaterally rewrite my personal history to conveniently fit whatever shallow narrative they're trying to promote. I'm sick of having the very real struggles my family endured minimized and casually dismissed because it's inconvenient for someone's televised agenda. Joy finally managed to find her voice again, though it was markedly stripped of its earlier confidence. I never once suggested your struggles weren't legitimate. I was merely highlighting that perhaps the complete picture is far more complex than the version you've presented. The complete picture? Jennifer laughed, a chilling, humorless sound. The complete picture is that my parents literally risked their entire lives and savings for my dream. The full picture is that my mother took out crushing loans she couldn't afford just to keep me in New York. The full picture is that my father's health suffered significantly from the relentless stress of watching his life's work collapse around him. But I suppose that doesn't generate as compelling a television segment as implying that I'm some sort of privileged, fraudulent success story, does it? Sunny Hostin, clearly deeply uneasy with the volatile direction the segment had taken, attempted to gracefully pivot back to safer conversational territory. Jennifer, I think we all understand that achieving fame in Hollywood is incredibly complicated, and everyone's path is truly unique. Do we? Jennifer challenged, turning to face Sunny with a gaze so intense it made the seasoned host visibly recoil. Because it certainly sounds like some individuals at this table believe they possess a superior understanding of my journey than I do. It sounds like some people think they can perform a few cursory Google searches and suddenly they're certified experts on my life story. She turned back to Joy, who was now nervously fiddling with her note cards and pointedly avoiding eye contact. You want to know what truly offends me about this entire line of questioning? It isn't just that your facts are wrong, though they are spectacularly incorrect. It's that you are sitting here, attempting to deliberately diminish the agonizing, real struggles my family navigated. Struggles that fundamentally molded the person I am today and instilled the work ethic I carry. The studio was so quiet the whirring of the cameras capturing this unprecedented outburst was clearly audible. Producers were frantically trying to decide whether to risk cutting to an immediate commercial break or allow the sheer dramatic gravity of the scene to continue unfolding, knowing that either choice carried massive professional consequences. I never had any intention of diminishing anything, Joy said weakly, finally lifting her eyes from the cards. I was simply trying to initiate a genuine conversation about the realities of privilege and opportunity in this industry. By attacking my family? Jennifer's voice cracked with raw, sudden emotion. By suggesting I've been intentionally dishonest about my personal history for the entirety of my career? By implying that everything I've earned is somehow illegitimate because you think my parents possessed more capital than they actually did? Alyssa Farah Griffin, the newest addition to the panel, looked utterly terrified, having clearly never witnessed anything remotely like this on the show. Her inexperience was showing as she sat frozen, seemingly unable to decide whether to speak or remain absolutely silent. Jennifer pressed on with her verbal counterattack, her voice growing stronger and more authoritative with every passing moment. And let me share one more detail that your research likely failed to uncover. When my father's business failed, when we literally lost everything we owned, do you know what happened? The very entertainment industry you assume handed me opportunities on a silver platter. They abandoned us. Casting directors who had expressed interest suddenly stopped returning calls. Agents who were actively courting me simply vanished. I had to start completely over, from absolute zero. The sheer, visceral emotion in Jennifer's voice was almost overwhelming. You want to talk about privilege, she challenged. I'll define privilege for you. Privilege is having the capacity to sit comfortably behind that desk and tear apart someone's deeply personal history without ever having endured a single day of it yourself. Privilege is believing you possess the inherent right to question a person's truth because it doesn't align with the simplistic narrative you wish to impose. Joy was now visibly shrinking in her seat, nervously shifting and shooting desperate glances toward the off-camera producers, seemingly hoping for someone to intervene and rescue her from the inferno she had ignited. I successfully rebuilt my career completely from the ground up, Jennifer continued, her voice now resonant with victorious strength. I auditioned for every minuscule role, every low-budget independent film, every commercial that would have me. I slept on my friends' couches. I worked low-wage restaurant jobs between auditions. And I never, not once, utilized any supposed family connections, because they simply did not exist in the first place. Whoopi, finally sensing a desperate need for a pivot, attempted to regain control of the crumbling segment. Jennifer, I think we can all deeply appreciate how passionately you feel about this subject. And perhaps now, we should gently transition to discussing your newest film. No, Jennifer stated firmly, raising her hand again. We are not moving on until this specific issue is addressed correctly. Joy asked me an aggressive question. She made public accusations about my family and my core integrity, and I am going to ensure she understands precisely how wrong she is. The audience was completely mesmerized. This was not just a celebrity losing it, this was a masterclass in courageously defending your truth when someone crosses a boundary. Social media was already in complete overload, with clips being shared millions of times and new hashtags instantly trending worldwide. How will Joy escape this corner? Will she apologize or double down? Keep watching to find out the unbelievable final outcome. Joy nervously cleared her throat, clearly realizing she had only two choices: offer a sincere apology or escalate the conflict. Unfortunately for everyone, she chose to escalate. Jennifer, I genuinely understand that you are upset, but I think you are significantly overreacting to what was intended as a thoughtful, academic examination of how diverse backgrounds factor into success in Hollywood. The collective gasp from the audience was palpable. Even the camera operator seemed to physically lean in, sensing that Joy had just made a catastrophic verbal blunder. Jennifer's eyes widened in profound disbelief. Overreacting, she repeated slowly, her voice dangerously quiet. You honestly believe I am overreacting to being flat-out called a liar on national television? I never called you a liar, Joy weakly protested, though her voice completely lacked conviction. You stated I crafted a narrative for public consumption, Jennifer shot back instantly. You stated there were inconsistencies in how I portrayed my upbringing. You publicly questioned whether my family's struggles were even real. What exactly would you classify that as? Sarah Haynes looked on the verge of tears, while Sunny was furiously writing notes, undoubtedly trying to formulate a strategy to salvage the show's reputation. Alyssa had given up entirely, staring blankly at the tabletop, clearly wishing she were anywhere else on Earth. Look, Joy said, attempting to reclaim some composure. All I intended to do was initiate a discourse on the complex dynamics of opportunity and success in this industry. I truly believe you are taking this far too personally. That was the absolute worst possible phrasing. Jennifer let out a soundless, chilling laugh. Too personally. You publicly attacked my family's financial history, you impugned my integrity, and you suggested that my entire life's career is built on falsehoods, and you have the gall to suggest I'm taking it too personally. She then turned to directly address the audience, a rare move in a heated moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fundamental problem with modern media. Someone spends 5 measly minutes on Google, and suddenly they believe they possess more definitive knowledge about your life than you do. Someone discovers a few isolated public records, and suddenly they are qualified to completely rewrite your personal history. The audience erupted in a deafening wave of applause, clearly and emphatically siding with Jennifer in the confrontation. The sound seemed to fill her with renewed confidence as she turned back to the panel. Joy, I want you to look me directly in the eye and tell me if you have ever been forced to choose between affording your rent and buying groceries, Jennifer demanded, her voice intense but completely steady. I want you to tell me if you have ever had to call your own parents and request money when you absolutely knew they didn't have a single dollar to spare. I want you to tell me if you have ever watched your own father openly weep because everything he worked for in his entire life was vanishing before his eyes. Joy remained absolutely silent, clearly unable to answer any of those intensely personal questions in the affirmative. I didn't think so, Jennifer continued, her voice lowering with authority. So maybe, just maybe, you should think twice, perhaps even a third time, before casually questioning the veracity of someone else's story when you have never lived anything remotely comparable to it. Whoopi made one final, desperate attempt to conclude the matter. Jennifer, I think we have all received your message loud and clear, and I believe this particular discussion has run its inevitable course. Has it? Jennifer inquired, turning to Whoopi with a sharply raised eyebrow. Because I don't recall Joy actually acknowledging that she was wrong. I don't recall her admitting that her research was spectacularly incomplete and her public accusations were totally unfounded. All eyes in the studio pivoted back to Joy, who was undeniably trapped. She could apologize and definitively admit her mistake, or she could continue to stubbornly defend her position and risk an even more catastrophic outcome. The silence stretched on, seemingly for an eternity, before she finally spoke. Jennifer, if I unintentionally conveyed the impression that I was questioning your integrity or the reality of your family's struggles, that was not my intent, Joy said carefully, meticulously attempting to formulate a non-apology that avoided any true admission of wrongdoing. That is not acceptable. Jennifer said immediately, cutting her off. You didn't give me an impression. You made direct, factual statements. You stated my narrative was crafted for public consumption. You stated there were inconsistencies in my story. You publicly questioned whether my family's financial struggles were real. Those were not impressions, those were outright accusations. But you know what? Fine. I will accept it. At least you are finally conceding you were wrong. The wave of relief that washed over the studio was almost palpable, as it seemed the confrontation was finally drawing to a close. But Jennifer had one last, definitive statement to make. Let me be absolutely crystal clear about one thing, she announced, her voice carrying the undeniable authority of someone who had just won a major battle. My family's story is not open for public debate. My genuine struggles are not up for arbitrary interpretation. And my core integrity is certainly not up for casual questioning by someone who believes a few superficial Google searches makes them the expert on my life. She purposefully sat back down in her chair, finally appearing to calm down slightly, though the fire in her eyes remained fiercely lit. Now, if anyone would actually like to discuss my new movie, the entire reason I accepted this invitation to be here, I would be genuinely happy to engage. But if anyone else attempts to play amateur investigative journalist with my personal history, this interview is officially over. Whoopi instantly seized the opening, clearly desperate to move past the confrontation. Let's absolutely talk about the film, Jennifer. Tell us about your compelling character and what specifically drew you to this powerful role. And just like that, Jennifer Lawrence professionally shifted back into star interview mode, answering questions about her upcoming film as if the preceding 20 minutes of explosive drama had never occurred. But every single person in that studio knew they had just witnessed something truly extraordinary, a moment that would be dissected and talked about for years to come. The interview segment concluded without any further incident. But the damage had been done, and a powerful lesson had been delivered. Joy Behar had learned the hard way that some celebrities simply will not sit passively while their personal integrity is attacked on air. And Jennifer Lawrence had shown the world that beneath her charming, self-deprecating facade was an unwavering individual who would fight tooth and nail to defend her family and her truth. As the credits rolled and the audience slowly filed out, the air was buzzing with a mixture of excitement and utter disbelief. They had just experienced one of the most indelible, explosive showdowns in the history of daytime television, and they knew it. So, what are your thoughts? What single factor do you think truly pushed Jennifer Lawrence past her breaking point? Was it Joy's relentless, personal questioning, or was there an even deeper emotional wound that was tapped into? Drop your insights and theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments that you absolutely won't see anywhere else.